Hey everybody, Todd Dills here again with a special edition of Overdrive Radio this week to mark the Federal Veterans Day holiday, commemorating the military service of so many around the United States. And in particular, two veterans, Army and Navy respectively, who are clear-eyed about just what that service has meant for their long careers in trucking business ownership. Florida-headquartered owner-operator Scott Reese operates Reese Services today with his own authority, with a 2021 Freightliner Cascadia and a box truck with a driver employed for it that operates more locally. Roger Burdgette, meanwhile, headquartered near the Savannah ports in Georgia, has built a Podium Logistics fleet to now 50 trucks, serving the port but also flatbed needs of customers in the area. Both men happen to be beneficiaries as veterans of the Select Trucks Freightliner affiliated dealer network's Proud to Serve benefit program for veterans, for offering essentially a cash credit on purchases of power units and or warranties at one of the now 44 Select Trucks locations nationwide. That program this year celebrates a significant milestone, the 8-year run since Proud to Serve was launched in 2017 as a way to give back to military service members among Select Trucks customers. As Daimler Truck's remarketing president Chris Backerberg noted, the program has now delivered more than $1 million worth of savings on truck equipment and warranty service, among other benefits, to military vets. Each veteran's used truck purchase comes with $6,500 back with up to 2 options used: down payment match, a warranty upgrade, and or a new tire purchase assistance. In addition to the discount, Select Trucks donates $500 for each qualifying truck purchase to a charitable organization supporting veterans. Total donations have reached more than $80,000 since 2022, including a $25,000 donation to charity this year. Quote, "We're proud to stand behind veteran entrepreneurs as they build their business," noted Backerberg. Continuing, "Saving these men and women over $1 million is our way of showing appreciation for their service and sacrifice." After the break, we'll dive into conversation with Scott Reese, whose partner dealer in Jacksonville, Florida, helped him out of more than one jam in recent years, in addition to delivering that $6,500 discount on a couple of different purchases. Particularly helpful when he was diagnosed with cancer and had to come off the road for a time. Following Reese, Roger Burdgette stresses how military service truly set him up with the self-discipline needed for a drive to entrepreneurship in trucking. Both men offer recognition for the importance of Veterans Day for the country, and for them specifically too. As Roger Burdgette put it,
"Well, when it rolls around, I really think of people who had even more sacrifice than we did. There's a different day for that, but I always think of the people who gave their life. They gave a limb. There's different degrees of sacrifice, and that's huge."
Keep tuned. Ask any driver. Wind or diesel problems don't happen all at once. That's why Howe's Products offers total performance and protection. Diesel Defender cleans and prepares your system so you start off the season strong. Before cold hits, dose up with Diesel Treat to keep fuel flowing all winter long by preventing gelling in even the harshest temps. And if you do ever get stuck, Howe's Diesel Lifeline is your rescue, reliquefying gelled fuel fast. With Howe's, you don't just face winter, you beat it. Visit HOWES, HowesProducts.com for more. Here's owner-operator Scott Reese, taking us back to 1988 and his first run of military service.
I went in the Army the first time from 1988 to 90. I got out. I learned how to drive a 5-ton truck, just a little straight truck in the military. And I went to the warehouse. When I got out, I was working in a warehouse and I was talking to one of the truck drivers that pulled in. It was for, I think it was Zimmerman Express out of Pennsylvania. And I was talking to him, 20-year-old kid, didn't know much, was married, trying to figure out what to do. And he told me how much he was making driving a truck. I think back then it was like $600-700 a week. And I said, well, that don't sound too bad, so maybe I'll go to truck driving school. I went to truck driving school, drove for a little bit here and there, and decided to go back in the military around 2001.
Okay.
Went back in the military. When I went back in, I went in as a truck driver, driving a truck in the military. Got deployed in 2004 to 2005 to Iraq. We did convoy security. We escorted the Turkish. We escorted what they called the TCN, which was the Turkish civilian nationals.
Okay.
There were Turkish people over there, and we escorted the fuelers, the fuel trucks.
Okay.
There were Turkish nationals that had fuel trucks, and we escorted them everywhere. Come home, had some illnesses and stuff, and the military medically discharged me. They medically retired me, actually.
Okay.
I was retired for a little while, went to college, started a little trucking business, ran it for a while. So we got out of that. And my wife didn't want to be in a truck no more, so we quit doing that for a little bit. Ended up with colon cancer in 2020. And after that, I told her, I said, I'm going back to driving a truck. I don't want to be around all this dirt and mold and everything, because we were repairing houses. Around December 2020, I went back to driving. I believe it was end of January, February time frame. My cancer doctor called me and told me my markers were up. So I come back in to find out, what was going on, and found out that the cancer had spread to my liver. I had talked to Chad from up at Select Trucks in Jacksonville. That's where I bought my truck from, because he wanted to know how things were going. And I told him, I said, well, right now I got cancer. Cancer came back. I said, I got to talk to the doc and see how things are going. Doc told me I was going to be laid up for a while. I was talking to him, and he said, well, hey, he said, if you need it, I can come down and get the truck, put it on our lot, and try to sell it for you. He said, that way you're not stuck with it, trying to make the payment. I said, well, that's fine if you want to do it. I said, I'll tell you what, you come down and get it. You put it on a lot. If you make a profit, you keep it. As long as the bank's paid off, I don't really care how you do it. But if you make money on it, you can keep the money, He come down the next day and picked the truck up, took it up to his lot, and I think he had it sold within 2 weeks.
Okay. That was early 2021, I guess.
Right. It was February, March 2021. Took the truck and sold it for me, yeah. Yeah, he made a little bit of money. They tried to give it back to me. I told them I didn't want it. A deal was a deal. That's how I work. You know what I mean? They offered to give me the profit. Yeah. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to take the truck and sell it for me, but he did. And
what was that truck?
Oh, it was a Freightliner. I can't remember. I think it was a Columbia, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't real old. It was a couple years old. Yeah, it was a select truck. It was, one of the select trucks. So, they, my understanding is it goes through, pretty good inspection. And, I got the warranty on it, the Freightliner warranty. So you could buy an extended warranty but it was factory backed. It wasn't a third party warranty. It was actually Freightliner. So I was laid up for a while, and, after the cancer had come back to my liver, they went in, they took 60% of my liver and my gallbladder, and was laid up for about a year. I tried to go back. I went back to, just basically just goofing around doing nothing, you know what I mean? And then January of 23, I had to go in for quadruple bypass. After I had my surgery and I come out and stuff, I was like, I can't do too much physical stuff, I said, no, I guess I'll go back to driving, here and there. And that's what I did. And I went out and talked to Chad and bought a 21 Cascadia from him. Select Trucks has a thing that they give you, if you're a veteran, they'll give you $6,500. And it's towards, you can use it towards tires or whatever you want to use it towards. And I put the $6,500 towards the 2-year warranty through Freightliner. I had a problem with the truck. I had about 20,000 miles on the truck when I bought it. I put 20,000 miles on it. Again, it was a used truck. Had issues up in Hartford, Connecticut, and they needed to redo the whole fuel system, rebuild the whole fuel system. They said the fuel system was contaminated. So I called Chad, let him know what was going on, and that supposedly Freightliner wasn't going to cover it because it was, it was contaminated fuel. Well, I ain't got nothing to do with it. There's no way that, in 20,000 miles, I could have had put rust in the fuel pump. And even the mechanic at Hartford said, that there's no way that you caused this. It had to be a pre-existing condition. Long story short, I talked to Chad. Chad talked to a few people and Freightliner, and them took care of it.
That's real value there, and a good relationship with him down there for sure, and just being willing to go to bat for you.
My thing is you do me right, man. And you own a business, I'll come back to you a million times. You know what I mean? And I'll tell everybody I know, hey, bud, these are the people you want to deal with. I won't buy a vehicle that I cannot get factory warranty with.
Owner-operator Scott Reese's past experience with aftermarket warranty providers led him to that practice, he said. The company's going to great lengths not to cover various defects and problems.
Because it's not cheap if something goes wrong. Right now I'm running one box truck and one tractor trailer, and my goal is to, by the end of next year to have, 4 or 5 trucks on the road.
Probably going through Select there in Jacksonville.
Me and Chad are looking at a truck right now. We're trying to work out some numbers and see what we can do on it.
And working with brokers, or you have a customer?
We just work off the load board for now.
Past military service. Like, how do you feel like it's fed into your experience in trucking? And
it teaches you about being loyal, about putting in the work, whether you want to put it in or not, to fight through it, to keep going. That's how it was with, when I got sick with the cancer. My wife was up like, don't worry about it, we're fine. They'll cut it out, we'll drive on with our life.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you an attitude that, not an attitude, but that you can conquer what you want to conquer as long as you just keep pushing. They used to tell us in the military, change your socks. Drink water and change your socks, In other words, drink water, make sure your feet are good, you can push through it, Quit crying about it, get up and do something about it. That's how I approach I try to approach every day. I try to approach every day as a blessing that I'm still alive. I get up. There's times, you just don't want to do nothing, but the military is, put it in you that whether you want to do it or not, it needs to be done, so let's get it done and be done with it.
Yeah.
And I try to instill that in my son since he was, born, since he was little. Life's rough, man. Nobody's gonna give you nothing. You got to get up and get what you want and earn what you want.
Your son's that your only child, or
right? No, he's
okay.
He's 30. He's 34. Him and my wife run the handyman business.
Doing kind of home repair, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they go in and do when people move out. My wife has a contract with a property management company. We go in, she goes in, her and my son and them go in and fix. If there's a problem with the tenant's got a problem, they fix it. People move out, they go in and fix it up and
right.
Get it ready for the next person.
Cool.
It's a pretty steady business, and they only have the one customer, and that's all they need. They stay busy all year. So,
when you think about the fact that Veterans Day exists and just kind of the commemoration of it, what's the experience of that when it comes around every year for you?
It's just another day to me.
Okay.
I think about the soldiers that I had, that I was in charge of. I don't think of them just on this one day. I think about them all the time.
Yeah.
There's soldiers that to this day, I've been retired for 20 plus years. I still talk to on Facebook, and I still check in on them and make sure to see how they doing. And I met them when they were 18-year-old kids, and they stuck it out and they retired. I had a few of them talk to me about, hey, I'm about, should I get out? And I explained to them, I can't tell you to stay in or stay out, but I can give you, my outlook on it. Stick it out. You can retire at 38. I messed up and got out the first time. I should have stayed in. I've had a lot of jobs and a lot of different experiences in my life, and the military was probably the best job I had. You can't find a better group of people to hang out with that got the same, I don't want to say values, but, same concept of life as, to an extent that, you do and you're trained to do, and you can play, you play around all the time, goofing off, but when push comes to shove, they're going to be the ones standing there on your back, holding your back up while you're holding their back up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, yeah, but the Veterans Day for me is just it's another day that, it gives people that never been in the military. I think it has them reflect more on what the military and the veterans have done than people that actually serve, because, again, we still talk to each other. We still, talk about stuff we did 20 years ago here and there, Some people just look at it as for an excuse to cook out,
Yeah. When you were in the Army, you were in transportation, right? Can you tell me your rank and classification, or the highest that you got to, and maybe the company you were involved in?
Yeah, I retired out of Texas. I was retired as an E6 staff sergeant. When I went in the first time, I was nothing but a private, E1.
Yeah. No.
So,
Here's a big thanks to Scott Reese for trusting us with his story, likewise for his military service. A bit different of an experience than that of our next guest, CEO of Podium Logistics, Roger Burdgette, a Navy veteran who served back in the mid to late 1980s. Similarly, though, like Scott Reese, Burdgette can see clearly the impact of his training and service as a young man and everything that's followed for him in the decades since. Podium Logistics is now up to 50 trucks in total, serving the Savannah port from a nearby home base on a 5-acre campus. It's not his first trucking company rodeo, either. Started up in 2018 after a previous fleet he grew to 30 trucks over more than a decade and sold out to an interested buyer. Like Reese, too, he's also benefited from the Select Trucks Proud to Serve discount program for veterans, with around 70% of his fleet, he estimated, being procured from the dealer. Here's Burdgette tracking back to his Navy enlistment in the mid-'80s.
A little bit about me, as far as my military career, started in 1985, right out of high school. For me, I really needed some discipline. I needed structure in my life because I didn't have any. There was something inside me always that said, you can do better than what you're doing, because I wasn't doing a whole lot. I was actually a high school dropout at the time.
Okay.
So I really needed some guidance, some direction, and I've grown to value education later, went on to get my degree out of it when I got out of the military, went on to get a master's after that. You don't really realize how much you value education and your military experience until you get out in the real world and you figure out, hey, I need something more than what I have. I need more tools to get the job done. But the military gave me a really great base of discipline and how to get things done and structure. Their SOP is just above anything we experience here as civilians in the civilian world. So that kind of laid a foundation for being an entrepreneur and getting into trucking. And my dad, he was a truck driver, most of my entire life, retired with Redway Express. But the funny thing is I never had any aspirations of being in trucking at the time. I'm like, okay, Dad, that's great. And you're putting food on the table. My mom was an RN. Nobody had education in my family at the time. But they worked hard and the work ethic was phenomenal. And I learned a lot from that, learned a lot from my father and my mother in that. But, logistics came knocking when I got out, when I did my first degree, and I went into a management program in 1995. So I got about 30 years experience along the way, and I've grown to love it.
Right.
For me, coming out of the military with something so structured, I really needed something to keep me busy during the day. I'd figured out for me and the type of person I was and am, if I'm not busy, I don't perform. I need something that keeps me busy all day long. So when I got into logistics, I'm like, okay, well, this, I'm not looking at the clock to see what time I get off. I'm looking at the clock to make sure I've got enough time to do everything, because it's an enormous, job, as you guys know. So that's really what
24/7
attracted me to it. I'm like, I can do this. This really drives me to do better. So that's
Right.
kind of how I got started, kind of dug into it and been doing the same thing almost ever since. And with those years of experience, learned how to do a lot of things in the admin world and learn how to manage money and do different things, and decided to go out on my own in 2001 for my first company. It was R&K Logistics. We grew that company fairly quickly to 30 trucks, and it was a nice brokerage and trucking split. Small company, just like we have now. We're 50 trucks now with Podium. And had somebody come along and want to buy it. And I'm like, I've never really even thought about that, but okay, that sounds really cool. And at the time, I haven't even been around anybody that had sold a small trucking company. So it was very appealing. So I sold that, got at it for a little while, and then I missed it. So, I started Podium in 2018. Same type of principles and family values that we've always had, and working hard. And now we're 50 trucks today, still trying to grow. We're looking possibly expanding into the Charleston market. Right now we're in Savannah market mainly. And we have a mixture of port and flatbed service. We do a little bit of everything. I've always had the mentality of, if I have a customer that needs a certain thing and we don't provide, if they'll work with me, I'll provide that. I'll invest in that, and provide their services. Just give me a relationship. I don't even have to have a contract with you. Just give me a relationship and give me a chance to show what we can do. So we do a lot of things. Primarily, we're flatbed and a port work container. We're actually in Effingham County, so my business is pretty much the first trucking company business as you come into Effingham County. So we're about 9 miles from the port. So it's
Okay.
We've had a lot of proximity growth out in Effingham since then. But
Right.
I was lucky and blessed enough to get our property. We have a 5-acre campus here with 2 facilities. We're just, other than just being actually 7 acres, it's 2 acres up front. It wasn't really anything I was super smart and did. I got in the right place at the right time, you know what I mean? and now it's a very valuable place. Hard to find land now to park anything.
Sure.
So we're very fortunate to be in our position.
When you were growing up, were you in Georgia there too?
Yeah, South Georgia and the big metropolis of Nashville, Georgia. If you've ever heard of that. 3 traffic lights and 6,000 people when I was growing up. And now we're 3 traffic lights and 6,000 people. I'm 60 years old now. And I, here locally, I'm also into politics. Never aspired to do that. I'm a commissioner here locally. And I'm really big on growth around here, and not just crazy growth at any cost, but growth so our children, our grandchildren have a place to come back and work. We created jobs here, and I love logistics or any kind of company that creates jobs, because we didn't have that growing up. There was the only thing we could hope for in Nashville was to leave and go find a job somewhere else or go to school and do something. There was nothing there to keep us there. And these small towns and all, they love being rural. They love being, kind of to themselves. But we don't have any legacy unless we create it ourselves. So our children and grandchildren have a place to come back and work. So
the military was a lifeline toward something else in that regard, right? And you were in the Navy, right?
I was in the Navy, 4 years in the Navy. I was on board USS John F. Kennedy for 2 years. My last 2 years I spent in the NMCB 133 construction battalion out in Gulfport, Mississippi. So I got to do the typical med cruise on the Kennedy, which Kennedy was the last conventional carrier in those days. Now they're all nuclear. And then NMCB 133, I got to, I was an admin person for the battalion. So what was really cool was all the admin people, when they would be setting up for construction, when they'd be building a bridge or whatever in a different country, during wartime, our job was to be their support on the ground, like frontline troops and different things. So we got, we're qualifying with M16A1s, and I was in the ammo dump area for a mortar platoon, 60 millimeter mortars. So, man, I got to have a lot of fun blowing stuff up. So I really enjoyed that, the latter part of my enlistment. And I thought about staying in, but, I just had the urge to get out and get into the business world. I love business.
Yeah, and you served, you said starting in 1985 up to when exactly, what year?
August of 89.
August of 89. So
Yeah,
okay.
August in at 85 and out at 89. Did 4 years.
Okay. You missed the first Gulf War and some of the later deployments that have gone on, but I know there was plenty going on around the world during that time as well.
It was just starting to get a little heated up when I was coming off the Kennedy in '87, because we were extended. We were on a 6-month deployment, and then we had another battle group come on board with us around Spain when we were trying to come back. It's a 30-day cruise back and forth, and so we were extended another 30 or 60 days, if I remember correctly, because things were getting heated up. We were in Israel. We had a bombing. Some of our troops were over there and some of our sailors were over there, which was unfortunate. So, even though you're not in wartime, it's always a sacrifice. You're always going to be away from your family. You're always going to be in harm's way at some point or another. A lot of people that we work with over there, it's unfortunate, but they don't like us, even though we protect them. And they have a bad view, or did in those days, of our servicemen and women, in different countries.
It's kind of a hard thing to overcome, right? I bet.
It is. You're there to do a good thing, and then people don't see it. I can imagine what it's like today with all the things we got going on in the world. Probably even more bold and everything than they were back in those days. But, they always would debrief us every time we go into a different country over there. Hey, there's Spain. For the most part, they like you, but you're going to find some resistance here and there. Israel is probably one of the more volatile places I went to at those times. Italy was just a party. So, there's always a good part of that, especially at those ages. And, you're in that stage of life that you just want to have fun. But when you're ship life is different. You're like, okay, where's my day off? You don't get a day off. It's 7 days a week. The only time you get a day off is when you're in port. So you hope you build up enough time where you have a little bit of time off so you can go explore those areas and see some really great countries. But when you're at sea, man, it's 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, because that's what else is there,
I talked to another veteran yesterday who, has spent most of his career as a truck owner and driver, truck owner operator. And, I asked him the same question, but, for you as a Navy veteran, you come up on Veterans Day every day. What is it? What's your experience of it like? What does it mean to you? And I guess what's the message that you would want anyone to know from your perspective about it?
Well, when it rolls around, I really think of people who had even more sacrifice than we did. There's a different day for that, but I always think of the people who gave their life. They gave a limb. There's different degrees of sacrifice, and that's huge. But in my day, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have communication. I could just hope for mail call. So, it brings back all those memories of being in a space that's big as my desk for my living quarters. And, I was an enlisted guy, and we just had nothing, got paid nothing. So it brings back a lot of those memories, but those are proud memories. And I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Right.
There was a lot of times of lonesomeness. Is it some really tough experiences for somebody that's never been away from home to go and do, and you just can't go home, and get that support anymore. It's really tough on people in my day anyway. So it brings back those and brings back some proud memories. I'm proud to have served in some capacity to protect our nation. Like I say, if I had to do it again, I would not hesitate 1 second. I would go do it again many times over.
Do you place a premium on military service amongst the folks that you hire? Is it that's something that you go out looking for when you talking to truck drivers to come work there, and others as well? Something you said made me think about another question too, which is, did you ever drive?
No, I never drove other than
Okay.
in the yard. They won't let me touch one other than that. I'm an amateur race car driver on the side, so I don't think
Okay.
they want me in the seat of a big truck. That's a whole nother story. But yeah,
Okay.
to answer the question, I've got an interview with a young man in November that's getting out of the military for office staff. He's in logistics right now. We have several veterans on staff now as truck drivers. Phenomenal guys. They always, those are the guys who just get it done. I wish I had more of them. I wish I had a way to recruit more military veterans into our organization, because like I say, they may have been in the same position I was, seeking that discipline and needing that discipline. And when you get out, you've got this new toolkit for yourself. Well, then you got to figure out how to take that toolkit for yourself and apply that to the civil world, civilian world. That transition can be tough. And since I've been there and done that, I know I need to have patience with that person. So I think me being a military veteran and a business owner, we can cater to that a little bit better because I've been there and done that. And it's tough transition sometimes, man, especially if you spent more than one enlistment. It can be rough on them. But yeah, I would totally value any type of military veteran to come on at any capacity here at Podium. For the veterans out there, I think everybody should be honored in some way. And it is an honor to have that. If you don't have it on your driver's license, go do that. It shows that you're a veteran. Not only do you get some really cool discounts at a lot of places these days, which we never got back in our day. The military is viewed a little bit differently now than it was back in those days. And I'm glad it's more of a positive light than it used to be. But, if you're in right now and you love what you're doing, keep doing it. Get that retirement. That sometimes I think back and I say, what if I did my 20 years and then I had that retirement on top of everything else? That's a great career path for some people. And sometimes I wonder where I would be at if I did that, having that base. And it would matter a lot right now as I'm getting older and getting, looking at retirement someday. I don't ever see myself as actually retiring. I love to work. I love what I do. And then most of all, I love my people. The culture is everything for Podium. We're always working on culture. But, if they've got aspirations to be in logistics or anything, just in the military, they've served and they're ready to get out and do something, give it time once you get out. If you can, transition slowly and don't give up, because it does take time to make that transition from military life to civilian life. But so just be patient and have faith. I have big faith up above in God. And I think, there's big 4 areas in our life, and then it goes back to our 4 fires mentality a good friend of mine wrote about. And basically there's 4 fires. There's your physical fire, which I'm big on. Always take care of yourself. There's your personal fire, your relationships with your family and your people. There's your professional fire, which, guys like us, we have no problem with. We'll work ourselves to death if we're not careful. So there has to be balance on there. And lastly, your for lack of a better term, your creator fire. If you believe you have a soul, then probably the creator of that soul might want to have a relationship with you. So there's a spiritual side of that. So I think we're 4-dimensional men and 4-dimensional people. And if we have balance in those areas, I think that's the key for longevity. And I think that's the key to really having a good life. You can make all the money you want to in the world with businesses and things like that, and your health be terrible and won't be able to enjoy that past 60 years old. You can have great health and great physical capabilities and everything else and have no personal relationships. So, what do people do when they get to the end of life? I wish I'd have spent more time with family and things like that. So I think there's a big balance everybody should look at and keep.
Here's big Overdrive Radio thanks to Podium Logistics' Roger Burdgette and Reese Services owner-operator Scott Reese for their stories to mark this Veterans Day 2025, a fitting acknowledgement of the role of military service in American life and American trucking, no doubt. Find more about Select Truck's Proud to Serve discount program via links in the show notes for this podcast, wherever you're listening. Overdrive Radio is on Spotify and SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts and YouTube, Overdrive's Facebook page, and any listening platform, really. Leave us a review there if you're enjoying these, and a big thanks in advance for it. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker-songwriter Long Haul Paul Marhofer. The theme is Legend of the Snake Man by Marhofer, featuring the guitar work of Travis, the Snake Man himself, Whammock, Terry Tusock Richardson on bass, keys by Tisha Mingo, Jim Whitehead, and on drums, Andrew Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive's own social media coordinator, Jasmine Campbell, senior editor, Matt Cole, executive editor, Alex Lockey, and video editors, Lawson Rudisell and Andrew Glenn. Next week, October Trucker of the Month, John Penn's story of an owner-operator business that's increased efficiency to such great extents over the course of more than a decade. He's at a whopping 10-plus miles per gallon average in his current truck. How'd he get there? Well, we'll see you next week to find out.